All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Dad Level Podcast. I am doing a bonus episode with my wife's grandfather, Roy Bonario. He actually is credited for opening the first comic book shop in Houston, as well as many other things, and being an influence on pop culture. And um a lot of the comic book shops that y'all probably go to today in Houston probably went to Roy's shop back in the day. I know my dad did. So, Roy,
Yes,
for joining me. Um,
yes.
so I guess um, what got you into comics? Or
Oh, I
some?
started reading comics when I was a kid. I was collecting them, and they only cost a dime, and I used to store them in my closets, and I just got a ton of them. And I just have been doing, even growing up, I collected. Of course, later on, what happened was that my mother found them in the closet and she burned all of them. Said they could. She said that they drew roaches, but it really didn't stop me. I still blow it. When I was in the army, we used to buy comics at the PX. Kept them in my locker. But and then when I got out, of course, in 1970, my friend, I had the idea of opening a memory shop, selling records, movie posters, and comic books. And I got talked one friend of mine into giving me the money to start, and I opened up on the Bissonnet, opened up Roy's memory shop, and in there I had records, comic books, and movie posters. And the uh, the comic books, I bought a lot of them from some of the uh, uh, poster movie, excuse me, uh, magazine exchange places. They used to sell them for a nickel or a dime, and I would get them and mark them up to about a quarter. And that went on for quite a while. Same thing with the records. I bought those from jukebox places. The movie posters I bought from the poster exchange in Dallas, with Duncan Posters. And this did real well for me for a good while. Of course, as time went on, this changed because the sources dried up, you see, and the ones that were left, they were charging too much for. I couldn't get them anymore. The only thing I was left with at the end was records. I must have had 5,000 records, which I still have today, stored in my house in Selma. They're taking up all the room in the living room. Debbie took,
Yeah.
but all the rest of it's gone, Vince. And anyway, I don't know what to say except that I really love this. You can't make a living out of something that you don't like. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
very true.
loved all three of those, and thank God I was able to make a living out of them and support my family all through the years. Actually, it was opened in 1970, and my last shop was in 1996 when I retired. So all those years, I supported my wife and family, and that's where I'm at today. And I lost my wife in 2010, but I'm still here, and everything is going swell.
So, what was some of your favorite comics back then?
Oh, my favorite comic at the beginning in 1939, uh, it was Superman. I bought the first action comic and Superman, and then in about 1940, when Captain Marvel came out, I switched over to Captain Marvel. Of course, they only cost a dime, so I was able to buy both of them.
Hmm.
It was only when they started going up that I had to quit. And in 1960, they changed. Golden Age went out, and the Silver Age came in, and I didn't care for any of those.
Yeah, it was a different change. I remember some of the stuff my dad was telling me about how um, the differences in the characters when they revamped them and everything, and then
They
uh,
revamped it, and I didn't care for that.
um, so what were some of your fondest memories of running the shop? Was it like the people that came in there, the
Yeah, I opened that store and discovered opening day when I opened that store, I was overwhelmed by the people that showed up. I had advertised it in the newspaper, and I must have had at least 75 people show up that first day, and they practically cleaned me cleaned me out. They bought me out of all kind of stuff in there, and I met. That was how I met a lot of my friends that I still have to this day, like Ernie Fram. Ernie Fram came in there, and several others that I know to this day that are still alive. There's only about 3 or 4 that are still alive, but they were customers in my first store in 1970.
Yeah, I remember my dad, like I said, telling me stories about going in your shop for the first time, looking for Captain Marvel comics and stuff, and um, but he would go to the flea markets because there was a couple shops that he would try to go to, and then going into yours, he was able to locate a lot of stuff he was looking for.
Yeah, that was the thing. Those people that came into my store, they were younger than me, but they shared the same interest with me, and I had a 16 millimeter projector, and on Saturdays I would show movies in the back room, and they would all come back there and would sit there and watch movies and serials and cartoons for about 3 hours.
Yeah. Um, so, what was it like opening, or not really opening, but starting the Houston Con, the first convention here in Houston?
Oh, the first Houston con, my friend Mark Schooley and I had the idea that to form a club, a comic book club. And so we got a list of names from Fred Van Cleve, who had the North Side Book Emporium over on Fulton, and he gave us a list of names, about 100 names, and me and Mark split the list, and he called some, and I called some, and we told him what we were going to do, and lo and behold, when we met at the Y that first night, uh, about 75 people showed up, including Larry McMurtry, the guy that wrote Lonesome Dove. He
Hmm.
was there. And we told him what we were planning to do, start a club, and they were all for it. And we did start the club, and we had the first meeting at the after the Y. We met at a hotel on Texas Avenue. We had the second meeting there, but at that time only about 40 or 50 people showed up. And as time went on and the locations changed, it narrowed down to it lasted to about 35 members. Now the first con that we put on was at the Ramada Inn in 1960. We put on a convention at the Ramada Inn on the Gulf Freeway there, and that we didn't have any guests, but we had movies and the dealer's room were all in one room, and then at 6 o'clock we closed shut down the dealer's room and put in the projector, and we would run movies. The first movie we ran was The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and then we
Hmm.
ran a serial called Dick Tracy versus Crime Incorporated. That was the first one. Now it was a good while after that I got in touch with Earl Blair and Glenn Kessler and Mark and I, and then we started putting on conventions in places like the Royal Coach Inn and the Shamrock and places like that. And then we started getting the big time guests. I mean, we had, let's see, I'm trying to remember now. We had Forrest Tucker, uh, we had Jock Mahoney, uh, we had let's see, we had this really big woman movie star. I can't think of her name now. We had Johnny Weissmuller. Uh, anyway, like I say, and finally, in the last two conventions, we had Johnny Weissmuller. In the last convention, we had Roy Rogers. After that, I got out. We got out of the convention business, and Jim Newsom took them over. After that, for another couple of years, and then they just died away. I think Oklahoma took on some of it. But that was a good run for the conventions, man. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I also after I shut down our conventions, we attended movie and comic book conventions, big ones in Memphis, Oklahoma, and in California. We went to some big shows there where they had big guests. So that was a great thing. And I think it was about the year 2000 that I quit going to all of them and just settled in the house there and retired.
So, how many shops did you end up actually out having throughout the time?
Well, I had one, and I tried to have two, but I tried it for a month, and it just didn't work. The second shop just wasn't taking in enough money. It was in Pasadena, so after a month, I closed it, and I kept to one.
Okay. And then, yeah, I was talking to my dad. I know that I don't think that I ever actually got to go to one of your shops with him whenever he would go. We used to
Yeah,
go make the rounds to all the different comic book shops on Saturday and Sunday to find things and back issues and but I know that
um, there's some pictures on Facebook of my shop on this and that. There's some photographs of the front of my shop, and on the inside too. You'll see pictures on Facebook of that.
yeah, I think I'm gonna actually put some of those pictures maybe in this video after I re-edit it later. But I want to kind of just keep the core at the moment with what we're recording right now, and then when I get time, I definitely want to put that in there
That
for
sounds
the video.
good. Yeah.
Uh, so, did you ever have any, as you know, since you were the first one to open a comic book shop in Houston, I'm sure there was others that followed.
Oh
Did you?
yeah. We had two ladies opened up a comic shop across the street from me. They did pretty well for a while, and then TJ, he's still in business at Third Planet. He's
Mhm.
still going. So yeah, I was a couple of people that did.
Did you ever have any real big competition, or like was it pretty mutual between the shops?
No, it was friendly. TJ and I were friends, and the competition was friendly.
Okay.
He would send me customers and for stuff he didn't have, and I'd do the same for him.
Yeah. And see, that's always good. You know, if you don't have something, you always send the business
Yeah,
over there because it builds a good relationship.
yeah. It's a good example of that is if you watch the movie Miracle on 34th Street, you'll see Macy's and Gimbel's doing the same.
Yeah. So how I know a lot of kids grew up and thank you for the time and stuff that they got to share and the experiences they gave you. I mean, you gave them and influences, and I know at least one of them opened their own shop. uh, so Ricky Evans, isn't it right?
Yeah, Ricky Evans. Yeah, Ricky Evans. I knew him when he was 13. So, no, Ricky Evans is a good friend of mine. He has Bedrock Comics, and he and I are very good friends.
Yeah. And yeah, it's funny, getting to see the transition of comics now, but being able to experience the when it was in its popularity. I mean, even though like it's a niche thing back then, in the 80s, 90s, 70s and stuff, but um, you know, it's really cool getting to see, how comic books have changed, or the shops have
Comic
changed.
comic books today really, I don't care for them. They just don't have the innocence and the flavor of the
Mhm.
old comic books. And some of the other really good founders of comic fandom, we mustn't forget GB Love, who put out the Rockets Blast comic collector. He lived in Florida, and because I invited him to come to Houston, he came here and he lived in Houston, and he died here too. I went to his funeral, but GB was kind of he had a deformity. He couldn't hardly speak, but he was a very intelligent man, and I want to tell you that he did a hell of a lot for comic fandom.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, stories Anna would tell me, and I think we talked about it before.
Yeah.
The so through your adventures, has there any what were some of the experiences of meeting different people that you get to see change and grow, or um, people that you never thought you would have met otherwise because you were in the comic industry, as far as having your own shop?
Well, there's a few of those that I probably wouldn't have met if I hadn't had that shop. I'm trying to think now. One of them was Gene Arnold, who was a big radio announcer here in Houston. I probably wouldn't have met him because he saw my picture in the paper, and he came in to buy comic books. And then there was, let me see who else. Uh, I met Henry Brandon, but he didn't come into the store. Uh, let's see. Gosh almighty. No, there wasn't any big celebrities that came in that I can remember, but there was an awful lot of people from Houston, Dick Gottlieb and several others who were, well known in Houston that came in. So that's all I can think of right now.
Hmm. Um, I would say, okay, so how about this? What do you feel about the direction of comics now, and how do you think it's going to have the same feeling that we had growing up for like our grandkids, like with Edward? And
I don't think that would be possible, Vince. I
mhm.
just don't think so. Mainly because of the books themselves, and also because of the youngsters today. I don't think they're really that interested in it. We also had those funny books back then with the animals. Animal Donald Duck and Mickey
Mhm.
Mouse. And all that. See, kids don't go for that today.
Yeah. I know that I'd like to get Edward into getting some stuff, but I haven't been in a comic book shop in a long time. I mean, the conventions, the only things we get to do now, especially with my dad, and Mark trying to do their own comic.
Yeah.
Um, I know that it's changed a lot. It's cool to see the new things that are out, but um, it's just different. Um, I know that.
It's all changed. I saw a couple of the movies they made, like Captain Marvel and Shazam and Wonder Woman, and with the exception of Shazam, I didn't care for it. It's still there when you notice that Third Planet still has those customers. You know that there's still time for comics.
Mhm. Um, so, what do you miss about the most about having a comic book shop and being in that environment?
Oh gosh, I tell you what I miss the most is having the kids come in and meeting all these kids who became friends with me, for the rest of my life. That's what I miss the most. And
Mhm.
we shared that same interest to this day, and I miss that the most. You can't beat that. No.
No. Yeah, because that was one of the things that I liked about when my dad was either running a comic book shop, the one we had on off of Shaver and Edgebrook was the Thorn Comics and stuff, and
Yeah.
getting to see the people there. And I, of course, I was young then, but I still remember people coming in and asking about stuff and all the things. And then when he started working to do managing for All Star Comics on El Dorado, um, that was we were there all the time. After school, we were there with my dad and helping him bag and board, getting bags and boards ready for people to purchase, and uh, straightening up the shop, and to
Yeah.
make a little extra cash. But
Those are the days when the two or three comic stores like us, we could all make a good living because there was enough for everybody. We had plenty of customers.
so, what do you think about the pop culture becoming more mainstream? Like everybody now feels or has like this love that they've may not have when they were kids, or they did a little bit, but then they got out of it and went back into it because it's now mainstream. Everybody's so like, I'm a nerd now. I love this stuff. I'm an expert on this stuff. Versus back then when it was like, you know, you're trying to discover all this stuff because it's new to you. You're like, man, this is amazing. Well, you're like a kid walking into a candy shop. You see a million different types of candies you've never tried before, and you want to experience, but you have no clue where to start.
Yeah.
Uh, the So, what are your thoughts on like how it may be for like the younger generation growing up with that type of stuff?
They
Uh,
don't know they just don't know what they're missing, what is that? How can you miss something that you never had? That's what's wrong with them, see, and it'll never come back, Vince. The magic is gone. It's gone.
Hopefully, we'll be able to rekindle that with our stories and everything that we tell our kids and stuff. And
I hope so. That's the only hope we have.
mhm. um, Trying to think of something else to ask you. I don't want to leave it kind of on a downer note like that. But I guess, what are your hopes for the next generation?
Well, let me think here just a minute. For the next generation, I would say still the best thing, first of all, don't collect anything because it's going to be worth something. Collect it because you like it. And in my opinion, the best thing that I like today is music. So I would stick to what is it, CDs or whatever it is that has music on it.
Hmm.
Pick out your favorite songs and keep them forever because they'll be with the music will be with you forever. You'll grow older remembering the music of your youth, and that's what I recommend.
Okay. Well, Roy, thanks for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope to actually maybe get to talk with you again about some more memories and things of the past. And
Well, it was my pleasure, Vince, and I'll be happy to talk to you in the future about anything else whenever. So I appreciate it.
thanks.
Okay,
All
bye
right.
bye.